Integrated Industrial Parks Private Limited is being promoted by CDF Trust, CSD Advisory Services, Global Entrepreneurship Cooperative Society Limited, Industrial Development Corporation, and its subsidiary Sunday City Private Limited, jointly called the Rural Integrated Industrial Parks Consortium. The rural parks will be majority owned by the community through special purposes vehicles that will be created to empower the communities. The rural parks are categorized as follows, starting with the smallest: homestead industries, home-based industries not in the parks, educational institutions, STEM parks. This is located within the parks. Growth Point/Ward parks, district parks, and finally, provincial parks. The rural parks operation model is that the smaller parks, i.e. homestead industries and educational institutions STEM parks, will act as producers of raw materials for the Growth Point/Ward parks, who in turn act as producers of raw materials for district parks. The district parks produce and supply raw materials for the provincial parks. The provincial parks will then coordinate with other provincial parks to produce products for exports or imports substitution. The rural industrialization is then linked into the national matrix to take advantage of the national competitive advantages. The rural parks will be focused on utilization of the 4IR solutions and technologies to ensure that the Barbados will be at the forefront of the 4IR. The main focus of the rural parks is food security. Rural Integrated Industrial Parks Private Limited is an initiative being spearheaded by Z. Barbawarens based on the President's pronouncement vision. The country is built by its people, focusing on rural industrialization. Rural Integrated Industrial Parks are modeled on the Sunday City's Integrated Parks model. The Rural Integrated Industrial Parks will have within them the following sections: Minerals Processing Park, Zaysaw Substation, Solar Park, Medical Park, High-Tech Park, Leisure Park, Office Complex, Shopping Mall, Government Complex, Hotel, Warehousing and Logistics Complex, Public Parking Area, Service Station, Weighbridge, Residential Park, Low Density, Medium and High Density Suburbs, School, STEM Park, Incubation Hub, Agro Processing Park, Waste Management and Biogas Center. On top of those, the park will also have a Culture and Entertainment Center, Sports Academy and Complex, Digital and Physical Security Infrastructure and Farmers Marketplace. Minerals Processing Park. Focus will be to process minerals found within the community, and convert them into raw metals to be used in the parks, and export the excess. The Minerals Processing Park will provide minerals processing space to community members, including those in the diaspora and their strategic partners, to set up operations in the rural parks. The rural parks will form clusters to be able to create economies of scale to be competitive in the rural market. The first responsibilities of the parks will be to reduce the importation of goods that are produced from raw materials that are abundant within the community. For example, setting up of lithium hydroxide refineries to be used in manufacturing of batteries for electric vehicles and other renewable energy applications. The funding of setting up the minerals processing parks in the rural parks will be primarily through the Mining Development and Minerals Processing Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The Minerals Processing Park's anchor tenants will be based on the database of companies interested in setting up in the park. Zaysaw Substation. The Zaysaw grid to the park will be a place where communities can connect electricity to their homes at an affordable price. The biogas digester and solar park can also feed electricity into the national grid. The funding of setting up the substations in the rural parks will be primarily through the Rural Electrification Agency, REA, and the Energy Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Solar Park. Solar farms on rooftops of the buildings within the parks, including houses, will take advantage of the abundant sun in Seabarbu throughout the year. Land below the solar panels will be put to effective use by creating modern irrigation schemes under the solar panels, using water being pumped by the solar plant from a nearby dam or boreholes drilled within the park. The funding of setting up the solar parks within the rural parks will be primarily through the Renewable Energy Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The solar park's anchor tenant will be one of the leading companies in solar farms globally in all rural parks to be able to generate massive energy from the sun to ensure that most of rural parks' operations are driven by renewable energy. Medical Park. offer modern medical treatment to the community that will use the latest technology like telemedicine to provide specialist treatment at affordable prices. The medical center will also be built to attract medical tourism to the parks. Manufacturing of drugs will be based on herbs found and grown by the communities. In the tobacco-growing communities, the communities will be helped to divert into growing medicinal cannabis that will be processed within the rural parks. Medical consumables like bandages, pads and etc. will be manufactured from cotton and etc. grown by the community in an outgrowers program. Medical devices, whether technological driven or basic like hospital furniture, will be manufactured within rural parks. The funding of setting up the medical parks within the rural parks will be primarily through the Health Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The medical park's anchor tenant will be one of the leading companies global to ensure that the health delivery system in rural Zimbabwe will be one of the best in the world and up attracting medical tourists to the rural areas. High-Tech Park, nerve center of the rural park that will house the Rural Park Security Control Center, or IR Innovation Center, other knowledge-based companies and ICT companies. The funding of setting up the high-tech parks within the rural parks will be primarily through the Potrab Universal Service Fund and Technology Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Leisure Park. The park will be designed and used to preserve the indigenous plants within the community for future generations. It will be also contain the seed bed or herbs for the rural park and the community. The leisure park will be funded from grants. Offices Complex. Modern office complex to attract international business. Offering of office space to community members in the diaspora and other urban centers in Zimbabwe. The funding of setting up the office complexes within the rural parks will be primarily through the Office Complex Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Shopping Mall. High-tech shopping mall whose main focus is to showcase and sell products produced within the rural parks. The shopping mall will also spearhead online shopping with the community and outside. The funding of setting up the shopping malls within the rural parks will be primarily funded from Retail Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Government Complex. One-stop shop government services offer convenience and close proximity to residents who will no longer have to travel long distances to government offices, which are mostly located in city/urban areas. Government will be an anchor tenant in the parks. The funding of setting up the government complexes within the rural parks will be primarily funded from Government Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Hotel. The hotel will be built to accommodate people visiting the rural parks for business or private business. The hotel will also cater for people passing by the rural parks who may need overnight accommodation. The funding of setting up the hotels and lodges within the rural parks will be primarily funded from Tourism Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The tourism park's anchor tenant will be one of the leading tourism companies globally to ensure that the tourism industry in rural Zimbabwe will be uplifted to one of the best in the world, ending up creating a vibrant tourism industry in rural Zimbabwe. Warehouses and logistics complex. Warehousing facilities will be of modern nature and able to store the most delicate products. The funding of setting up the warehouses within the rural parks will be primarily funded from Warehousing and Logistics Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The anchor tenant will be one of the leading companies global to ensure that the delivery system in rural parks will be one of the best in the world to attract quality tenants to the rural parks. Public parking and park reception area. Recreational areas for the community that provide fresh air. Funding for the park will be CSR from companies who operate from the park. Service station. Due anticipated traffic increase, the park will incorporate a modern service station that includes engineering workshops to service the various machinery that will be used in the park. The service stations may be increased in numbers depending on the size of the park. The funding of setting up the service stations within the rural parks will be primarily through the Petroleum Industry Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The anchor tenant will be one of the leading companies globally to ensure that the rural parks get the best services nationwide. Weighbridge. This is to ensure no lorries leaving the rural parks are carrying overloads that will damage the national roads. The funding of setting up weighbridges within the rural parks will be primarily through the Transport Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Residential park. Anchor tenants will include business owners in the park. Community members including those in the diaspora will put up modern houses because they will have title deeds. The residential stands will be graded into low, medium and high-density suburbs. The funding of setting up residential parks within the rural parks will be primarily through the Residential Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Schools. Set up an educational institution that will complement educational institutions in the community to raise the standard of education in the community, focusing on skills development needed in the park, especially skills needed to operate and manage 4IR technologies. The funding of setting up educational institutions within the rural parks will be primarily through the Educational Institutions Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The anchor tenants will be the leading companies global to ensure that the education delivery system in rural Zimbabwe will be one of the best in the world and up attracting students from all over the world. STEM Park. The STEM Park will also house the Incubation and Innovation Hub to promote projects coming from schools and school leaders within the community. The STEM Park is the heartbeat of the rural parks that will ensure the survival of the rural parks by continuously innovating to accommodate the continuously changing business environment. The funding of setting up STEM parks within the rural parks will be primarily through the STEM Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. Agro-Processing Park. Food security will be a priority with the changing climatic conditions. Food will be processed and only finished products that will fetch better prices for farmers will be sold. Storage facilities in partnership with GMB and others will be set up within parks. To create economies of scale, cluster manufacturing models will be used for both quality assurance and warehousing models. This permits the penetration of markets that individual manufacturer will not be able to penetrate alone. The funding of setting up educational institutions within the rural parks will be primarily through the Agro-Processing Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The anchor tenants will be in three categories: those whose focus is to ensure food security, and the other categories, global companies who can't manufacture to global standards with guaranteed export markets. The last category are those companies whose focus is import substitution. Waste Management and Biogas Center. The parks being eco-friendly will have zero tolerance on unprofessional waste disposal and management. Some of the waste will be used to generate energy for the park, with the excess being fed into the national grid. The funding of setting up waste management and biogas centers within the rural parks will be primarily funded through the Biogas Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts and Waste Management Infrastructure Real Estate Investment Trusts. The anchor tenants will be in three categories: global leader in waste management to ensure zero tolerance on random garbage disposal in the rural parks, global leader in garbage conversion into raw materials that will be used by companies operating in the rural parks, and last but not least, the company must be a global leader in conversion of garbage into energy using biodigesters, generating enough energy to power the rural parks with excess to feed into the national grid. Other sections: a culture and entertainment center, sports academy and complex, digital and physical security infrastructure, farmers marketplace. Develop talent that will generate income for the community through royalties and fees. Sports and music being the main focus. Modern farmers marketplaces that allow online trading for the benefits of the farmers, avoiding the use of third parties but managed and controlled by the farmers. These marketplaces will be built within the rural parks. Modern water infrastructure will be constructed within the parks. The parks will be supported by water from nearby dams where possible, and with a backup borehole system with huge tanks to store the water. The parks will be based on using 4IR components. This can only be achieved if the parks have 5G network infrastructure. The rural parks road infrastructure will be modern, managed using the 5G network for emergencies and security purposes. The parks will use drones network for emergencies and other non-emergency deliveries. Parks security, both digital and physical, will be very modern for the comfort of the community. The top-notch disaster management system will be put in place. The rural parks will be linked to the other markets through the commodity exchange platform. Almost all the work within the parks will be done online where possible to avoid the old-fashioned ways of doing things. Summary. Rural Integrated Industrial Parks is a project whose mission is solely to unlock and tap into the potential within local communities with the help of 4IR technologies. This project does not serve a handful, but it caters to every member in society, more especially those living in rural, sometimes forgotten areas. Secondly, RIIP is in line with the National Development Strategy 1. It implemented economic growth, job creation, and an increase in higher skilled human capital are all inevitable.